So here we are, Peter Shmock with Perpetua Neil in Singapore. Hi! It's so far away. And I'm so far away. So we had this great idea, Perpetua had this great idea about this time of the year and what it could mean in terms of how you are in your mind and your body and in your business. And why don't you take the lead and kind of some of your initial thoughts on this, and then I will follow in as you spur my thoughts.
Absolutely. So it's 1st of October today, and we have the last quarter left. And at this point of the year, it's very easy for us to do two things. One is to think, oh my gosh, the year is ending and there's nothing else I can do. So I kind of feel a bit like shit, especially if you, in your mind, without really taking stock of what you've done for everything, you tend to put yourself up for all sorts of perceived or real failures. The other thing we tend to do then the other thing we could do in our minds is that we tend to just charge forward in our lives without pausing and really reflecting on everything and what the year has given us. So when I tell my clients, in terms of the best way to work, or in how Peter and I always Christian as the Jedi way, really important to step back and give ourselves this time to take stock, this space to take stock. Because actually, time. If you spend some time doing that, you buy back a lot more time and well-being.
Right, exactly. You just, I knew you would do this. You would spur something that happened in my own life, but also what happened today. And I was touching on it a little bit earlier when we were talking, but this young woman athlete who is 25 years old, very gifted, and she may make an Olympic team in a winter sport. And she had just finished doing some trials back on the East Coast, and it went really well. And she came back, and she's had a lot of things going on with her life, not only this big event physically, but the emotional component of travel, and there were some relationship issues with a boyfriend, and lots of things coming up. And so when she got back into town, this was now over a week ago, rather than to do what she had normally done, which is kind of talk to herself and say, you need to get up and get going and start training again, she stopped and did nothing. She just took care of herself. She had to go to work because that was one of the things that is on her plate right now. And she was totally out of touch with me because I'm helping her and coaching her. And she told me today that she had decided to take the week off just to give herself time to regenerate and do so without the internal message of you're being lazy. And it was so wonderful. It was like I wanted to give her a standing ovation because this has not been easy for her, and it wasn't easy for me in my career as well to take time off and to think somehow that you're doing something that's going to really impede your progress.
Absolutely. I guess, like in terms of one way easy about it would be when you're charging your phone. So if you plug in your phone and charge it and you play with it, you play this game that really chews up its CPU, then it's going to take a very long time to charge. If you just leave it there, it's going to charge a lot. So, because these days we're so used to charging our phones, we're so I think it's a very easy way in which we can relate to why we sometimes stepping back is the best thing we can do for ourselves.
Yeah, and there's so much fear around taking time, thinking that something is going to slip by, that somehow, and I'm talking now from my experience, I think the most time I ever took off from my athletic training was 3 weeks. That was in 20 years, because there was this underlying fear that I was always going to fall behind, that I wasn't going to be at the level that I wanted to be. And the underlying as I look back now, it's like there's a real lack of faith. I had a lack of faith. I just didn't believe and didn't trust that things were going to work out. That with my intention to become better, followed by action of actually going out and doing the physical things I needed to do, that to take some time off was just absolutely abhorrent idea, because I thought I would just sink to the bottom of the ocean. And I look back now, and it's like this young woman I talked about earlier. I think you have to have some faith that is of your greater self, or the higher power, or God, or whatever the case may be. And that doesn't mean you just give it all up and say that you expect this to happen, and I'm not going to do anything. But I'm much more in that ilk today, and I think it would be so much easier if people were to have this wonderful intention to do great things in the world, but also give themselves some slack, and just know that things are going to work out. Things really will work out all right.
Like it's the last line in Jurassic Park. They go, life will find a way. And yes, of course, like even if you don't do anything, life will somehow still continue. But at the same time, I think we got to have faith in the seeds that we're planted, the foundations that we've built, and the systems that we have followed with such discipline. Too often we just downplay what we do, and we tend to exaggerate what we do not do.
Yeah, that is absolutely right, and it can end up spiraling into this really self derogatory narrative internally that doesn't bode well for making progress or getting any further down the path of whether it be success or just enjoying your life more or being the best person that you can be. It really makes life a lot more difficult when you don't have this kind of openness and knowing that things are going to go your way if you just sit back and intend for them to do so.
And I think it's so got a lot to do with how we are so disconnected from learning how to respect. We're so disconnected from nature cycles. Instead, we're all about charging and giving 150% and thinking that's not enough. Then we amp it up. We think that burning out is normal, is acceptable. So if that is the kind of philosophy that we have in mind, then we believe that what's going to happen. So we don't know, we've forgotten the lost art of sitting back and waiting for the harvest to happen because we've really planted the seeds. And so I believe that, fall is a very good time in which we can learn whether or not the climate that we're actually in, fall, or whether it's going to be spring or just like distinct seasons. It's always important to remind ourselves and attune our bodies to learning to sit back.
Do you have some specific tasks or exercises that you do or that you have your clients do in terms of what that taking stock is? I'm sorry.
Cycles and the solstices, because again, this is there in nature. So it's very simple as a reminder. So one thing that we always do is we sit down and we take a what happened during this year. So what comes to fruition? What is in my life now? Are these things what I really want or what I don't want? And if that's what I don't want, if that's what I don't want, is it because this don't want is due to some kind of standard somebody else has given me, or is it I really want myself? So really, it's about understanding whether this thing is, how precious is it to me, how much is it, how relevant is it to me, and as people who achieve a lot or want to have very high performance, perfectionist type A people, we tend to think that we are not doing enough. And when we actually sit down and we take stock, we realize actually we have done a lot. We have superhuman, insane demands of ourselves that actually will never ever come true. Even if we go like, normal human standards, too much. My standards, not too much. We realize that actually we're being big. And then we tend to sit back and really have a good laugh at ourselves.
Oh, I can do that now, but I wasn't very good at doing that earlier on.
Well, the more you get used to laughing at yourself, the easier it becomes. Like, the first few times when it comes to dealing with any kind of failure that I thought was a failure or anything that just seemed too slow, I would just beat myself up all the time. It's a bit like you just inoculate yourself to realize that, what, laughing at yourself isn't the hardest, and life will go on. It's like when you're in school and the first time you don't get an A, it feels like shit. And then you realize that there comes a time when you need to learn how to not get A's so that you get your.
Yeah, yeah. And hope my battery doesn't run dead on me here. I may have to find an outlet. Technicalities, of course. There was so many athletes and non-athletes who I get to work with. Initially, are a little on the uncomfortable side when they start to take some time to take stock, to assess where they are and where they want to go, and how that's if they're on the path that they want to be on. And I think one of the steps is to being okay with it is getting over initially any sort of I would call it disease or any sort of internal kind of uneasiness that comes, and just know that it's okay, that if you take the time out to assess where you are and you're not going and pushing, and there's a little sense of discomfort, that it's okay. That don't let that throw you back into, well, I got to get up and start working harder again, and I need to start working out again, and I need to keep my nose to the work. You actually don't have to, and that discomfort, because it's a new habit. You're taking time for yourself, and it's fine. It'll go away, and people will find out that they'll have more energy or more introspection or more clarity on where to go forward if they can just withdraw that sense of I need to re-engage again.
I think one really important thing to flag up is that when we are very afraid of taking stock or sitting down to reflect, and instead we just like overwork, that overworking becomes a form of distraction because we don't know what to do with our minds, or we are so sad that when we sit down, it's not that like the world is going to end, but we are going to realize that we haven't done that much. So I read quite a few articles and studies how it's a form of it's not a discipline problem, but rather a problem to do with emotional regulation, because the task at hand can make us feel more uncomfortable. Maybe it's about the way we see ourselves. So imagine how if we always hold ourselves to crazy standards, then the actual act of sitting down to actually take stock of fear and ourselves can be very scary, because potentially we could think, oh my gosh, I haven't done enough. I am a failure. And when that you go and sit down and take stock.
Yeah.
So instead we want to just keep throwing ourselves into the work because it's a better distraction.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that people don't realize is that if you're really a type A personality, I mean, I have been, I'm what I call a recovering type A person. And the people who I've known that have exceeded in life, succeeded in life, and done marvelous things, are type A. And what we're saying in our different ways is that it's not that you're going to all of a sudden lose that. You're not all of a sudden going to be a couch potato that's lazy, that's going to do nothing the rest of their life. It's just simply a way to temper and to get the most out of your high achieving way and your type A personality, so that it is nothing but a positive and an attribute. You're just giving it a little tempering at times so that you can extract the most out of it. And it's not like all of a sudden by taking some time off and taking stock and celebrating some great things that have happened in your life that all of a sudden you're going to become lazy. No, you're going to have another tool in your toolbox, so that when you need to chill out a little bit and rest your body and get a little clarity of what you're doing, you can do that. When you need to get back in the ring, so to speak, and engage, you can do that too, because that's how you engage in life.
Yeah, you're not going to lose all your muscle. They're not going
to yeah.
the hard work or the money you bank or your status in your career. I think that sometimes, often as type A people, we tend to get so cerebral and sometimes our brains. So instead of thinking that really I rest, oh my god, I rest, I'm just going to get lazy and flip all the way to the other end. So that really, it's living apocalypse land.
Yeah. And if I go back and share something that was something that came out of my career and not taking time off until later in my life, when I was done with athletics, and I realized that the time away from training and the time away, and today the time away from my business, actually creates this amazing space for things to be revealed and for things to be clarified that I wasn't able to get clarity on, or I didn't really see, by being so engaged. And it goes so counter to the way that I thought earlier in my life, and thinking that, unless I really pursued something, hard every single day, that it wasn't going to happen. When in fact, just the opposite. If I backed away and was unproductive, at least in my mind, that all of a sudden, like, I saw some things and got, well, this wasn't really working very well, and this would be a little bit better, and it was like magic. So it proved to me, and then in the work that I do with people, that wow, this is really potent as a way to get clarity and to move forward, upwards and onward, by not doing very much, quote unquote.
For me, one of the really amazing realizations that was my turning point, I quote to all my clients, is how Darwin only worked 4 hours a day. And there's a lot of research to show how when we are so-called lazy, part of our brain that is actually super active. We give it space to be active. And so what it does is that it can synthesize disparate concepts, bring them together, and help us or what I call, if we stand back and we give ourselves some time to let all these ideas ferment. Excellent wine takes time to ferment. So, have faith that all these ideas and all these concepts are fermented, and they will come out when they need to come out. It's not like you haven't met your deadlines.
Right.
Which is languishing somewhere and never doing.
Right. I continue to be amazed at how valuable this, especially I think this time of the year. I think it's a natural time around the Pacific Northwest. During the summer months, we have a lot more sun and it's warm out, and people are much more active. And the sun, and now it's in the beginning of the fall, and the sun is less apparent during the day. The gray comes. I think energy shifts. I think I've noticed my energy shift. The energy is not there quite as much. I want to sleep a little bit more. More of the people who I come in contact with, I poll them, and that seems to be across the board. And rather than fight it, it's so much more enjoyable just to kind of flow with it and give yourself, the space to, chill out and do what needs to be done, knowing that cycle, if it's a little bit of a down cycle of energy and vitality, there's other great things that are going to come out of it. We've been talking about that. And so allowing that to happen, and then knowing that the cycle of energy, as the seasons continue to shift, as they will, you'll come back into that energy again. And it's actually kind of nice to be able to think that you can flow with the seasons and with the energy in your body, and be okay with it, and not try to fight it all the time. Like I know I have a great deal of my life.
Well, nature has its own wisdom, and we are part of nature. So sometimes it's always easy to flow with it, so that we can access a lot more wisdom and knowledge.
Right.
Well, another important point was realizing realizing this whole benefit and reason behind learning to stop and learning to sit back. Because before then, I didn't understand. Like you, I had this big fear that I would lose myself, I would lose my discipline, I'll lose everything. So already, like I beat myself up for not having enough discipline. I think I'm pretty good at discipline. So already, it's always like that going in my head. So I told myself, you know what? Like since I'm already type A, I'm going to harness my type A nature to be type A about being type A. And if being type A means excellence, and I want excellence, then I'm going to get all type A about learning how to chill and sit back. But of course, with that comes this fear of what am I going to do with my brain and my life if I have to sit back. So, there's the study that I read last night on how people are actually scared. Some people who have high anxiety are actually scared of relaxing because they think that they need to get used to being tense all the time so that when the bad thing happens, there's not difference right now, the current level of tension and the bad thing level of tension. And so because of that, they put off relaxing, and they voluntarily, consciously put themselves in state of anxiety. Another group of people who tend to increase the anxiety with people with trauma. And I'm not talking about trauma in terms of you have you've been at risk of losing your life, or you've witnessed somebody losing their life, or threat to someone's life. I'm talking about everyday things, trauma, or what we call small T trauma. And trauma tends to be imagery based or sensorily based. So sometimes what happens is that we tend to worry, because worrying is verbal, so as to to press down any kind of traumatic symptoms. So I think it's very important for us to be aware that sometimes we choose to worry too much because there's other things that we need to sort in our lives. And there's no shame in having trauma symptoms or anxiety to sort in our lives. That is just a part of being human. As the seasons get darker and it's time to rest, this can be a very optimum season for us to go within and see which parts of us need healing. If like our systems are not healed, we can't do anything. We have to allow our body, respect our bodies and our systems.
Right. And that's really well said. And I think that the type A people can think of that as being a virtue that is part of their path to succeed in whatever they want to do. That it is not a negative. It's not something that's going to defeat you. It's something that's going to give you more fuel, to give you more potency, to be able to do the things you want to do physically, in business, in psychology. It doesn't matter. And I think that was you were saying, use your type A behavior mind. And I say that occasionally to people. I said, you are very, very smart. Here's what I'd like to have you consider. Consider, that by taking time off and by recovering, or whatever the case may be, with something that they're not very good at, that you can really climb higher than you ever thought, and it could be easier at the same time.
get your brain on board first.
Get your brain on board first. I know.
I was laughing with so many of my clients how, I said something there. They said, you know what, like if you tell me about emotions and all, I don't like that, but I understand why now. And I'm like, yeah. So I said that, you didn't come to me because I put out there self-care, learn to meditate for 3 hours a day, or learn to just feel, right? You get so pissed off.
Yeah. I know.
I came to you because you have a structure, and then you explain why I need to do X, Y, Z. And once I got my brain on board, that's when I realized I could do. Because the thing about being type A is that we tend to be so cerebral as well. So if our brain is not engaged, we are not convinced how we have to do something, it's just a waste of time. It's just bullshit. It's just something that makes us soft and useless. If we feel it's going to make us soft and woozy, like feeling too much and being like emotions, then of course we're going to run far away from it.
Right. Well, I think it's probably time for us to wrap it up. I mean, there was so much. This is something that could go on and on. But I mean, for the time that we've spoken, there was a lot of meat here, and I hope people enjoy listening to it. I enjoy talking to you as always, and we will do it again. Live from Singapore, live from Seattle. We are Peter and Perpetua, and until next time.
Till next time.